happy birthday to Emiliano Martinez, the Villa goalkeeper, getting ready, no doubt, to train with Aston Villa this morning, when it looked like he would head
be on his way,
to Manchester United.
So much my cast iron copper bottom projection of Marc Guéhi, right?
Well, to be fair, at that time, and you very kindly showed me the information that you had, and at that time of the day yesterday, it was cast iron. But things change. And that is the whole essence of transfer deadline day. Still on the subject of goalkeepers, incidentally, in the last few moments, Manchester City have confirmed they have signed Gianluigi Donnarumma from PSG. I think NASA was glad that Donnarumma was moving out of Paris Saint-Germain, from what I gather.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. People were critiquing, I mean, Emmanuel Petit, who I don't want to argue with his football knowledge because he's achieved such things at a high level.
Yeah.
But he was debating the thought processes of Enrique in one hand and Pep Guardiola in the other.
Yeah.
And I often find myself, I know people can lose their luster, but it's difficult to sort of work out why anyone would question what Guardiola thinks is a goalkeeper that he wants to sign and why Enrique might want to get rid of him. Here is the guy that's the champion of Europe right now, and here's the guy that's dominated English football for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a possibility they might know what they're doing.
Oh, I would think
Maybe.
so.
There's a rumour.
Simon, you were right yesterday. When we were sitting here with Petit in the studio, it looked virtually nailed on that Marc Guéhi would be joining Liverpool. But he hasn't. He stayed with Crystal Palace. The move collapsed after the 7 p.m. deadline in spite of Palace and Liverpool reaching an agreement of £35 million. Guéhi had completed a medical and personal terms were agreed. Palace had even shot a farewell video for their captain, which has since leaked on social media. I mean, you can end up red-faced on deadline day through no fault of your own. It's understood the deal was pulled after the intervention from Oliver Glasner, who was extremely unhappy at the decision to accept Liverpool's offer in talks with the board. And if you remember, on Sunday night, Glasner sent a very powerful message of his own on this man, Marc Guéhi.
He's our player, he's under contract, he's not striking, he's playing fantastic, he's our captain, we can decide. So nobody forces anybody to sign a deal, yeah? And it's up to us. So the only one who decides if Marc stays at Crystal Palace or not, and I have to say it in this clarity, is our chairman and nobody else. And it's all about Crystal Palace future, about this season. You know, we have such great times at the moment. This football club, maybe the most successful in his history. Yeah, and now the club has to take a decision which direction the Crystal Palace wants to go. I think this is the decision to make, and then let's see what happens tomorrow.
In this very studio last night, Simon, Alex Crook sat in the chair to the left of you and said to us, Glasner had virtually said to Palace, listen, you might have a problem with me if Guéhi disappears to Liverpool. In other words, we're saying, I might consider my position at the football club.
I mean, okay. There's Glasner will leave Palace at the end of next year, I suspect. I don't see him renewing his contract. So we're talking about something that's going to happen anyway. Now, whether Palace wanted it to happen instantaneously, whether he was going to do what others do, which is if he doesn't get precisely what he wants, he leaves. He has a case. Of course he has a case. You can't have done what he's done and had the success that he's had without feeling that you've got some sense of entitlement to be given some more support to be able to continue your progress. So I'm with him. I'm normally on the other side of the fence saying, well, hang on, people have got to get on with what they've got to get on with. They've got a contract, they've got an obligation. In this instance, I can understand Glasner's position. I can also understand Palace's position. Like, there's nothing Steve Parish or the board can do about Marc Guéhi's refusal to sign a contract a year ago. So they are now in a situation, what Oliver Glasner is saying is, and I suppose in some respects he's right to say it, in other respects you have to look at the picture of what the football club is. The football club exists beyond Oliver Glasner, exists beyond Steve Parish, existed beyond me, and so on and so forth. Right? The here and now, you've just traded the here and now. Now, you can only live in the here and now. You can only live for today. I get that. But in a year's time, if Oliver Glasner leaves and Marc Guéhi leaves, what will have been achieved? A slightly better season. But there'll be £30-40 million out of pocket. Palace is not a football club that has enormous amounts of money available to it because its shareholders don't want to give it to them. Yeah. They've got plenty of money, but they don't put it into the football club. They take it out. So with best respects to them, they've got an opportunity to sell a player for 35 million quid. They should. And Glasner saying, well, if I'm going to sell my centre-back, if I'm going to sell my best midfield player, my inside right in Eberechi Eze, surely I've got to have something to replace it.
Yeah.
So his argument would have been, clearly, they bought him a centre-back for 23 million euros. But he doesn't want to play him, apparently, according to press reports, because he's too young. He's a project.
Yeah.
The hell is a project at 25 million euros? When did a 25 million euro player become a project?
Yeah.
Surely he should be a first-team player and available.
Ready to play.
So with all that in mind, I make him right for saying to, in no uncertain terms, to the management of Crystal Palace, in this instance, Steve Parish, I expect to be supported. And taking away my best players and selling them without giving me replacements is not supporting it.
And that's a departure for you to go in that direction. Because normally when somebody holds a gun to someone else's head and said, listen, unless this happens, I'm out of here, you would possibly balk at that.
But you have to have a reasonable, there has to be, I always believe in equitability in a relationship. I believe that there is a fairness on both sides and people doing what they say they're going to do. It cannot be, Glasner cannot have signed on to Palace to have been given very little money last year. I mean, my understanding is they had to virtually shoehorn Palace into buying Muniz for 7 million euros. Look at Muniz now.
Yeah.
Look at that player.
Yeah.
And now look at this summer. They've sold Eze for 60 million quid cash, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And 7 million. So they've got cash around. They've got another 35 million coming from Guéhi. They've bought nobody. If you're the manager of that football team, you're going to say, I've delivered you an FA Cup. I've punched really high in the Premier League. I've got a year left on my contract. If you are seriously expecting me to stay beyond that contract, you've got to show me something.
Sure.
And
Yes.
so in that instance, I would go against the grain of what people would expect my reaction to be.
Yeah,
So far people have an expectation of my reaction and say, well, he has a point. He had a point all summer. And if you wanted to sell Guéhi, which is entirely reasonable, he's out of contract next year. He's going to be gone.
Yeah.
35 million quid is gone. You should have bought a centre half.
Of course, of course. And interestingly,
One that you can play.
as Guéhi remained professional throughout the entire process, which he did, we saw what happened with Isak and we saw what happened with Witha when they publicly agitated for their moves. Danny Murphy in this very studio picked up on that last night.
Every player's individual, and Guéhi's supposed to be a great lad, so respect to him for the way he's conducted himself. What I'm saying is, the way football is sometimes, this opportunity now might never come again. There's a possibility of that.
I get what you're saying.
Now, sometimes an opportunity comes to you in life where you have to do whatever it takes to get to that place, in whatever way you look at it.
Yeah.
He didn't. He decided, I'm going to keep playing, do the right thing. He made it easy for Palace to keep him. If he'd have kicked up a stink a couple of weeks ago, already out the team, telling Parish, if you don't let me have this opportunity, which might never come to me again, all the things that Isak's done, Wissa's done.
But that's great. But it is the only thing that's going to happen to Marc Guéhi is he might get injured. He's a centre-back. He's a rare breed. He's a top-quality international footballer, right? That's available on a free transfer at 25, 26 years of age in a year's time. It makes absolute sense for Guéhi to play nicely. Isak had 3 years left on his contract. Wissa had however long he had left on his contract. Guéhi is at the top of his game. He's at a football club that his reputation isn't going to go backwards. He's a good player.
Yes.
He's a top player. He's an international player. He's going to be part of the World Cup squad next year. What do you think is going to happen next summer? You think his reputation is going to be worse? The only thing that can happen to Marc Guéhi that can stymie him is an injury. Well, he could get that anyway. He could get that anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to wager his agents would have been saying, listen, it'd be ideal to go to Liverpool. It would be ideal to go to Liverpool now. But notwithstanding that, there's a January transfer window. Liverpool will come again in January because they might need some European Champions League support for centre-back.
Yeah.
And Palace might have got themselves together by that time. They'll know what they're doing with Glasner, and they might get 15 million for him in the January window. I don't think it's a comparison. I think Danny's point is that if you don't kick up rough, well, it depends on the attitude of who you play for. This is my point. I'm an idealist. I'm a little bit like Brian Clough. I believe in fairies. To quote his interview with back of Don Revy in the day.
Yes.
But I look at it and say, well, what about football clubs going, no, I'm sorry. I don't care what you do. I don't care about the histrionics. I don't care about the orthodoxy. I don't care about what you think you're entitled to. You're going to do as you're told.
Right.
And that's the challenge that I always rail against.
Sure.
And I try and put myself in those situations and go, what would I really do besides barking in a radio studio, which is easy to do? What would I really do?
Yeah.
And if I hadn't said to Isak or given him any assertions that he could feed upon, which he tried to suggest that he'd been given someone's undertaking, and I hadn't done that, I would concentrate that sod's mind quicker than a quick thing from Quickland.
I just showed Simon I'm involved in a very, glad you're all with us this morning, involved in a very interesting text exchange at the moment with the agent of Alexander Isak. I might bring some of that to air in an attempt to bring him to air. We'll see how that goes, Simon. So Marc Guéhi stays at Crystal Palace and didn't go to Liverpool. His move from Palace to Liverpool collapsed after the 7 o'clock deadline, in spite of Palace and Liverpool reaching an agreement of £35 million. Before I come to James, who's a big Palace fan, Simon, is losing out on £35 million for one more year of Guéhi worth it?
It depends what they do with it. I mean, if the team finishes 5 or 6 spaces higher up the league, then you're going to be 15, 20 million pounds better off as a result of his contribution. He's a very, very good player. Palace have helped to make him a very good player. You know, they gave him an opportunity. If you remember, look at the early interview. I mean, you saw it last night in the video that was leaked, which, by the way, I don't think is particularly embarrassing. Palace produced the video, assuming that the player would go through, assuming that other deals would drop. And so, you know, I don't think it's particularly embarrassing. I think it's we mustn't compare the situations between Isak and Wissa with Guéhi. Because, as I said earlier on, the big distinguishing factor is that Marc has 1 year left on his contract. And that is such a big difference in a player's life, because they know that likely in 3 or 4 months' time, this could come calling again.
Yeah.
And all players will back themselves. And this is a top centre-back. And we know as a matter of course that they are as rare as rocking horse. And at 35 million quid, you can't buy a top centre-half for 35 million quid. And so the fact he's going to be free next year, I mean, he's going to be able to feed this generation, the generation after that, the generation after that, and the opportunity is going to arrive in his salary as a result of there being no transfer fee. So whilst that's nice and refreshing in certain people's minds that the low-level footballer that thinks it's all about himself has operated in a certain way, a tried and trusted way, with the people that supposedly uphold the standards of the game, like the union saying nothing about it. On the other side of it, you've got Marc Guéhi that's simply stayed with his contract. And I suppose in this day and age, we should say, well, at least he didn't kick up.
Oh, exactly. He didn't kick up, and he stays and he fights the cause for Crystal Palace after suggestions that Glasner could step down if the deal had been sanctioned. James is a big Palace fan. James, good morning. What do you think of what Glasner said? What do you think of what Guéhi has done?
Yeah, morning, guys. I think I'm not sure exactly what Glasner said, but I do feel that this is all getting out of proportion, really, because Guéhi has always stated that, you know, he would be happy to stay on at Crystal Palace. And I feel that the media have been really sort of trying to make something out of this, that there isn't anything really to make out of it, because either way, it was down to the club whether they sell him or not. Guéhi stays. He's happy to stay. He will get a good deal at the end of the season. Should he go off on a freebie, it could go to whichever.
Yeah,
club
but James, hang on a second. The closer we got to the 7 o'clock deadline last night, and no doubt you were listening to us live on talkSPORT or watching us on the show, you must have been thinking, he's out of there.
Yeah, I was, and to be honest
Well,
with
then.
you, most of the supporters that I've been in chat with didn't want him to go, and we were happy to write off another. You know, we've written off 35 million over the last season because we were offered 65 million, and we wrote off 35 million, but we ended up winning the FA Cup with him and the Community Shield. So now this season we're going to write off another 35 million. But hey ho, we might win the European Cup that we're in, and we might end up top 6 in the Premier League. So it could be worth writing off another 35 million.
What do you think, James? I'm interested in your attitude and your approach. I think it's to be commended, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, in a year's time, or with due respect to James, he may not be in this crowd, but there will be a crowd of people saying, we should never let him go on a free. And that's the challenge of modern day football. You've got a contract, it's a commercial business, it runs on money, and the main commodity, as we're seeing when you've got 260% spike on people listening to transfers, it's that situation.
Yeah.
So you've got to protect yourself, and Palace are in a difficult position because the player won't sign a new contract. So 99% of football clubs would not bank on perhaps they're going to win the Europa League, which is going to be worth 25 million quid. Would not bank on the fact they're going to go further up the league, even though they're selling their best other players, their creative players. Would say commercial thinking has to come to play, which is what happened. The only thing I can't understand, and I don't understand, and maybe James has a view on it if he's still there, is why Palace didn't buy another centre-half.
Well, let's put that to Reg, who's another Palace fan. Why didn't they buy another centre-half? Why didn't they get somebody in who might have been like Guéhi in terms of standard, in terms of profile, Reg? Good morning.
Good morning. My only salient point is that He has never asked for this transfer, and he never wanted. He, all along, according to us fans, we believe he would stay to honour his contract, and that's what he would do. It's an honourable thing. He would honour his contract. Then he's got the right to make any decision he wants to. I do agree we should have been a bit more forward-thinking in signing a replacement. And if we could get one, we'd let him go with a blessing. I'm sure we would. Nobody would deny him that. He's been such a good servant for us.
Yeah. Reg, listen, thanks for the call. Here's John, a Liverpool fan who wants to say just before we hit 10:30. John, good morning.
Morning, gents. A bit disappointed by this one, if I'm honest. We haven't got a God-given right to buy any player. Let me get that clear. And I rang you last week after the Newcastle game saying that we need to go out and pay what Palace want for him. I think we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot by leaving it last minute. And also, I don't get the commercial value, because if we'd have paid 35, 40 million for him a week ago, we would have doubled our money immediately. And we would have had that backup. And obviously, Canate with injury has expedited it just a little bit. But I really think that we've missed out the boat on this one, and hopefully we can go back in January.
What about Isak? You throw that is done, and he's a Liverpool player at 125 million, John.
Can I let you know at the end of the season? I'm still a bit wary of the attitude, and when Real Madrid come calling, I'm hopeful Liverpool is the team he wants to play for. But it does raise a couple of questions, if I'm honest. When you look at the two, Marc Guéhi, you're getting 35 million, 40 million for somebody who's got an exemplary attitude. Hopefully we'll get that with Isak, but only time will tell.
What a good call. John, thank you for that. Simon, when you look at it, Newcastle's transfer window, I was in touch with club director Jamie Rubin last night, Simon, who's over in New York. And he came back with, it's been a very long window, feeling delighted to have the team now in a really strong position, competition in every position, and in a healthy financial state. He says, I believe this is a transformational window, and we are really pleased with the players we have got in. Of course, in comes Wolfameda and in comes Wissa, but out goes Alexander Isak. This transformational window, Simon, can it be framed as a success for Newcastle United?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Wissa is okay, isn't he? I mean, I don't think he's a wonderful player. He's 29 years of age. They paid £55 million for a 29-year-old. Or he's about to become 29 in a day's time. The boy that they bought, looks a good player. Is he a German player?
German player, yeah.
Looks a good player. And Alanga's a decent player and had a great season. He wasn't great at United for a period of time, but he was great at Forest and really came alive there. So it's interesting to see what Eddie Howe would think about it. And clearly these are players that he wanted. The big loss is Isak. Isak is, whatever we think of him as his behaviour has exhibited over the last 2 or 3 months, is a Rolls Royce of a player. So you're losing that and gaining what you would yet to be determined. We've seen what Wissa is. He's okay. So they've done okay there. They've paid a lot of money for an okay player that will fulfil the role that maybe Callum Wilson has vacated to some extent.
Yeah.
But the main guy is the German guy they built, and we've yet to see him. Now, when we were asked about Isak 3 years ago from Real Sociedad, what would people have said then? They would have said...
Oh, true.
So we've got to give this guy some chat. I mean, Eddie Howe has done a brilliant job at Newcastle. He's been a brilliant coach for them. This has been a difficult period, but, life's full of challenges, isn't it? There's much greater difficulties outside of football that people have to contend with rather than a player wanting to leave. And we'll see what Newcastle do this season, because they've got a fire on a number of fronts, haven't they?
They have. When you look at Newcastle's statement regarding Isak's departure, short and sweet comes to mind. Newcastle United can announce the sale of striker Alexander Isak to Liverpool for a significant British record transfer fee. We know it was 125 million. The Sweden international joined the Magpies from Real Sociedad in 2022 and made 109 appearances in all competitions. Full stop. That was it. This was Isak on arrival at Liverpool.
Well, Alex, it's done. You're a Liverpool player. Can you describe how you're feeling right now?
I feel amazing. It's been a long journey, to get here. I'm super happy to be a part of this team, this club, and everything it stands for. It's something I'm proud of, and I'm really looking forward to.
Why was it Liverpool for you? Why were Liverpool the club you wanted to join?
I think it's a mixture of what the club is building, but what they're building on top of what the club already is and the history of the club. So I think just me getting the chance to be a part of this, and I want to create history. I want to win trophies. That's ultimately the biggest motivation for me, and I feel like this is a perfect place for me to grow even further and to take my game and to the next level and help the team as well.
Finally, they have been waiting for this moment. What would you say to Liverpool fans watching this interview?
Just that I'm so happy that I'm finally here. Can't wait to get back out there, and hopefully we can share some amazing moments together.
So that was Isak. Sounded out of breath, didn't he? That was him on arrival at Liverpool and saying what we'd expect to hear from a player who's just joined a big
I doubt
club.
he knows much about Liverpool's history, but what he does know about is their present, which is that they are the Premier League champions and arguably the best team in the country right now.
Yeah.
And the team that needed a centre forward. So I would suspect that if Man City had been in situ and the Premier League's champion and wanted to buy him, didn't have Erling Haaland, he might have gone there. The fact is, Liverpool had the need. Liverpool had a centre forward requirement. Some might say they filled it with the other player that they bought, but Isak is a Rolls Royce. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah.
I mean, he's coming in with a lot of expectation, a huge price tag, and people will say, "Oh, it's not his fault, the price tag." Okay, well that gives him a get out of jail. Let's make sure he performs. Let's make sure he's held to the highest standard possible because he's executed and created and curated the situation. No excuses. This is a £125 million footballer, straight in the side, straight into scoring goals, or be judged by that.
Judge this for me. Newcastle's behaviour in this window. The first bid for Wissa went in from £25 million to a deadline day capture of £55 million.
Yeah.
They had a £35 million bid turned down by Brighton for João Pedro. Went back in with £50 million, but the forward went to Chelsea. There was a £70 million bid for Ekitike. He went to Liverpool. Yeah. There was a £70 million offer for Benjamin Sesko. He chose Manchester United. There were two bids for Jørgen Strand Larsen, another player who told his club Wolves that he wanted to leave, but it never materialised. Newcastle end the window with Wissa, Jacob Ramsey, Malik Thiaw, Voltemada, Anthony Elanga and Aaron Ramsdale.
Well, I mean, they wanted Wissa from the get-go, didn't they? They just didn't want to pay anything more than they felt they had to. I mean, again, all these so-called deal makers out there that know how to do deals that have never done in their lives would suggest that you just go in there and pay the price. Okay, they got the player in the end, right? The player gets to look bad. I mean, if they'd have gone into Brentford and bid £55 million on day one, what do you think Brentford would have done? They would have said, we want £65 million.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
So the point is that you can't do right for doing wrong. They achieve the outcomes that they achieved. You cannot compete. This is the unfairness of the current landscape of football, which is, what can Newcastle do to upset the apple cart? What can Newcastle do to upset the legacy football clubs, to destabilise the grip that the big six have over English football?
Yeah.
What can they do? Well, they can't buy their way into that position, as the other clubs have done. They can't rely on the history that's catapulted the teams like Liverpool through the 70s and 80s and 90s, through a barren period of not winning the Premier League for 30 years, to being back now amongst the clubs that are dominating European and English football. What can Newcastle do? They can't do a lot, can they? They can't buy that success. They've got to wait. They've got to build it organically. They've got to buy the best players they can and take incremental steps. And that's the unfairness of the situation that Newcastle find themselves in, because they've got an ownership model, albeit a relatively compliant ownership model that's not ruffling any feathers. And they're spending money, but they're losing out to the legacy clubs. I mean, United still have their lustre, still have their images. I mean, if I were a player, would I go for United or Newcastle United? I don't know. I'd speak to both coaches. And if I spoke to both coaches, I think I know which coach I'd go and play for.
Yeah.
Eddie Howe.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that they have their lustre. Chelsea, I've got such a reputation over the last 25 years because they were allowed, with due respect to them as a football club, to inject vast amounts of money to manufacture outcomes out of one man's wishes.
Right,
Not out of the organic growth of Chelsea because they were the peacocks of King's Road.
Isak is away to play for Sweden against Slovenia. Then he'll be back, no doubt be on the bench for Liverpool's first game. Maybe. Who knows? How does Isak and his agent come out of this?
Well, you've got some quotes from his agent, what was sort of Socrates, Plato-like philosophies that he's giving us there.
Well, I may as well bring it to air. Vlado Lemic, Alexander Isak's agent, just asking him for a comment this morning, does he want to join us? He's come back with a very short quote. It's nice when you have someone to be with, but it's even nicer when you know who you'll never be with again.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be welcome to Newcastle pretty soon.
Discuss.
Well, he's having a poke at Newcastle, I suspect. That'll enrage the Newcastle fans even further. I mean, the one flip side is they probably haven't got to deal with him again. How do they come out of it? I mean, you talk about Newcastle's statement. What are Newcastle supposed to say? They were called liars and disingenuous by a player. They were weak and didn't fill the vacuum, and they allowed this to get out of hand. And they could have controlled this narrative much better and controlled the player's mind much better. And maybe the player would still have been a bit difficult, a bit tricky, but it wouldn't have been this running soap opera with he said, she said. They would have nipped it in the bud. And I don't like that because they've allowed the oxygen. In the end, they've sold the player. In the end, they've got somewhere between what they wanted in an ideal world that was never really there. If they weren't going to get Liverpool to 150 million quid, but they got Liverpool to 125. So they met them halfway. Somehow they got another 5 million out of a solidarity payment, whether Liverpool are paying that solidarity payment to another football club on behalf of some sort of obligation, or whether it's a loyalty payment that the player has so graciously waived to get what he wanted. Of course, I can't quite imagine why any loyalty payment would be prevalent besides the contractual situation, which he's chosen to break by refusing to work. So I'd imagine that's an easy gimme. You ain't getting that loyalty payment, sling your hook. But I think that at the end of the day, it all becomes chip paper. And now you've got to hold this player to the highest. He should be given no dispensation, no football platitudes, no football crap orthodoxy. He's got to settle in. He's a top footballer. He wanted this move. Hit the ground running, judging by those standards.
Yeah, let's see what you're made of. Newcastle United fans, how are you feeling this morning about this transformational window that it's been dubbed by one of your directors? Because Alexander Isak, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, he's gone. 125 million quid. What's your take on it all now that he has gone? Is it good riddance? And what about the players you've brought in? Wissa, Ramsey, Thiaw, Voltemada, Elanga and Ramsdale. Where are you at with that? Is it indeed a transformational window for you?
You transform yourself from having the best centre forward in world football to having some also rans. So it's transformational, yeah.
Let's see. Also rans. Let's see what they're made of, though.
Well, this is my point.
All right.
I think we've seen what the Brentford player's made of. He is an average centre forward or an average forward in the Premier League. Not a superstar.
Voltemada could set the place alight.
Well, we'll see. We don't know that yet, but you've transferred. No, neither does the fella that gave you that statement. I can guarantee you. Does he know how good this player either is?
We are witnessing the after effects of last night's transfer window closing at 7 o'clock. Alexander Isak got his way. £125 million move to Liverpool from Newcastle United. Newcastle have brought in a bunch of players. Wissa, Ramsey, Thiaw, Voltemada, Elanga and Ramsdale. Jamie Rubin, Newcastle director, told me from New York City last night. Competition in every position. We're in a healthy financial position as well. I believe this is a transformational window. We're really pleased with the players that we have got in. Oliver's a big Newcastle fan. Oliver, good morning. Isak's gone. Are you really pleased?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I'm just I thought I'd just call up the vote and do the opposite as well. What the majority of Newcastle fans are doing at the minute. I'm here to defend Isak and his position, what he's done. I think what he's done for the club and the amount of goals he's scored and the magic he's producing. Obviously, he's won with that trophy the first 70 years. I think at the moment he's got full right to want to go ahead and join Liverpool. Obviously, the way he might have gone about it might have been incorrect. However, I think his decision joining Liverpool, I haven't got anything against that, especially if he thinks he's a £300,000 a week footballer. I mean, if you're putting a price tag of 150 million on a player, I think you should be expecting to pay £300,000 a week for him.
Yeah, but Oliver, if the move hadn't transpired and he didn't get the move to Liverpool, He already said publicly, I don't want to be reintegrated into the Newcastle squad. Would you be on the phone this morning to our show still defending him?
It's hard to say because obviously since that hasn't happened, but I think I still would have loved to see him play in the black and white stripes this season, no matter what his decision is, just partially because of the fact of, like I was saying before, what he's done for the club. I mean, last season he was the second top goal scorer in the league. The season before that, the third top goal scorer. I mean, he scored 54 goals in 86 games. I mean, you cannot complain with what he's done. And I know he came out and obviously said that he doesn't want to play for the club anymore after that. But I'm sure that he would have been more than welcomed back into the team. But
Okay, Oliver, listen, thanks for the call. Gary's a Newcastle fan. Gary, in comes Wissa, Ramsey, Thiaw, Voltemada, Elanga, Ramsdale. Have you got enough there and enough now to challenge Isak's Liverpool?
Well, morning, boys, by the way.
Morning.
The thing is, I think Eddie and his brother, the director of football or whatever he is now, I think they've done a canny enough job because, let's face it, a month ago when those damaging words came out from Isak or whoever he appointed to say those words, for me there was no going back, and we're more than just a one-player club. As much as Simon thinks we're a big club in Newcastle, we are quite a lot, we've got a big following. And he's strengthened where he's needed to strengthen, because if we were just going to be a one-player club and he got injured, we'd be knackered. That would be the end of it, and we wouldn't have anybody else to bring into other positions to maybe... I don't know if we're going to challenge Liverpool, I'll give you that. I think we'll have a good season as long as we do it right. And the one thing I would say is some of these youngsters that have come in, there's no better manager to put them under than Eddie Howe. When Isak turned up, he was out. It was Eddie Howe that brought him through, managed him correctly, give him his chances when he wanted to give him his chances, and to all intents and purposes, made him the player that he is. I don't care if the lad doesn't want to play football for Newcastle anymore. I've seen it before with lots of players over the years.
Fair enough, Gary. Fairly pragmatic view from you. We'll finish with George, who's a big Newcastle fan. George, do you wish Isak well?
No, I don't know. I think the way he's acted has been just disgusting. Listen, everyone for brain cell knows that Isak was going to leave either this summer or next. He should be playing for Liverpool, Barca, Real Madrid. That's fine. It's just the way he's done it. You look at Marc Guéhi, you know, it's fair play to him how he's acted. I really hope he gets a good move next summer. Just down tool. He's cost me points this season already. So no, I don't wish him well. I don't wish him well at all. I think he's a rat. But I am happy though with the transfer window, and the reason why is 2 years ago when we were in the Champions League. We had some fantastic nights with PSG, all that kind of stuff. But we didn't have the squad depth, which I think now we have. I think we've bought well. I think what we made, obviously, were unknown, but so is Isak. But Simon, I'm a massive fan, I really am. But seeing Wissa's decent, he scored 19 goals last season, and none of them were pens. So I do think he's a very good Premier League striker.
Well done, George. Well done.
Happy to be proven wrong. I mean, with all due respect to Newcastle, and I don't want to burn up any decent currency I may have in this call, the players that you've signed are players that no one's really particularly wanted more than you. And if they had wanted them, they wouldn't have ended up at Newcastle. Because every single player that Newcastle have gone in for, that another football club that's comparable to Newcastle or bigger than Newcastle, they've gone there. So you've got what's left on the table.
Well, George, are you happy to have Alanga on board? Ramsey on board? Voltemada on board?
Yeah.
Wissa on board?
I'm really happy.
You're happy?
I'm happy. I'll explain why. Simon's completely right. We're going for Pedro. We went to Chelsea. Listen, Chelsea's a bigger club than Newcastle at the minute. They can do more wages. Same with, Sesko. It's Man U. I know Man U are rubbish at the minute with that Turkey in charge, but it's still Man U. Yes, we're going for players who no one else went for, but Isak, no one went for him. We bought him. We made him better. And also, Jim, massive fan, but to say we're going for Liverpool's league, come on, let's try and get Champions League first before we can get the Prem. This season is to get out of the group stages of the Champions League, whatever it's called now, and try and get fifth or sixth.
Good call, George. Good call. George has put you right about a few things there. Yeah, George, good call. Thank you for that.
Well, I hope that's the attitude towards Eddie at the end of the season, because there was a point when Eddie had set the heather on fire with such a wonderful set of performances. Then we had that season where they dropped off a little bit, and all of a sudden people were questioning Eddie Howe. Now, you've had a brilliant season last year. If the attitude is, well, look, You know, we don't expect to win the Premier League, which you're not going to win. We don't expect to win the Champions League. We expect to be competitive in the Premier League and maybe get back in the Champions League spot and go out of the group stages. Then fine. That's absolutely fine. Voldemort comes in on the back of... Some of the previous callers said Isak didn't done anything. Well, Isak scored a lot more goals in the games that he played for Sociedad and other teams than this kid Voldemort has scored for... I'm calling him Voldemort, and I almost out Harry Potter. Voldemort has scored in his 111 games. He scored 24 goals in 111 games. So I don't doubt that Eddie Howe can make him better, but you're replacing a Rolls Royce with...
This would be good.
With I'm trying to think of a comparable, a half decent comparison, because it's not a Skoda. It's somewhere between. Maybe a Maserati. You've gone from a Rolls Royce to a Maserati, which the Maseratis make lots of noise. I've had one. They make lots of noise and don't go anywhere particularly quickly.
So do you.
True.
Question marks about Nuno at Forest. Last week, Nuno seemed to air his frustrations after suggesting his relationship with the owner, Evangelos Marinakis, had changed, become strained. They were no longer as close as they had been. Edu was appointed as Forest Global Head of Football earlier this summer, and he's taken control over the club's recruitment operation. But it seemingly was felt by many observers that maybe Nuno wasn't... best advised to speak publicly about the straining of the relationship with himself and Marinakis. Marinakis, for his part, spoke to TNT Sport at the Europa League draw, and he was asked about Nuno and how he got on with him.
We have a solid relation, and of course, sometimes we can be nervous, we can say one thing, we can say another, but what counts at the end of the day is the real relation between me and Nuno, between Nuno and the players, and between the players and ourselves, and everything is solid. We all want Nottingham to succeed, and also we are here in the good days, but we are even closer in the difficult days. So personally, I don't see a problem.
Everything is solid, nothing to see here. Do you believe him?
Well, we'll see an interview soon, won't we, with him standing next to Nuno, with Nuno going how wonderful his owner is and how delighted he is that Nottingham Forest and get given a new contract. We'll see one of those, won't we, with Marinakis' hand up his backside. I think Marinakis is a certain type of owner. He's a very strong individual. Whether you like him or you dislike him is irrelevant. He is very strong in supporting what he believes, and at this moment in time, what he believes is the pursuit of excellence for the football club that he owns in Nottingham Forest. He's just played down the conversation that Nuno Espirito Santo thought he was entitled to have with the media. I didn't think it was particularly wise. I'm sorry it won't serve him well in the longer game. But then again, if he doesn't win games, nothing will serve him well. You might get a little bit of dispensation, but I don't think Marinakis is cut out of the sentimental cloth. I think he calls things as he sees them, and he dispenses people services when they're of no use to him any further, which is a commercial relationship. He's not his pal. These aren't pals. Marinakis is an employer and he's an employee.
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets forgotten. And I know that everyone sits there thinking that football managers run the football clubs. They don't. They run the football team.
Yeah, but hang on. Nuno brought him European football this season.
He was given the tools to do it by his owner. He didn't do it in isolation. He didn't magic up a group of players out of nowhere. He inherited a group of players that I actually, in fact, tipped to get relegated. So you have to give credit. He was given a lot of support. Players were brought in. Yeah. Players like Elanga were brought in. Players like Callum Hudson-Odoi were brought in. Players like Chris Wood were brought in that have had peak seasons. And he's done a great job. He's done a great job. What was the alternative? Do a bad job. He did a good job, and he needs to be rewarded and recognised for that, and I'm sure he would have been. But that also means that you do have to remind yourself of where you are in the food chain. You aren't the owner of the football club. You aren't the person that writes the bills. You're an employee. And if your owner has a certain relationship with you that he wants to have from a distance at times, I don't know who football managers think they are, but they reap the well of it in the longer game because they get binned, and then all of a sudden everyone feels sorry for them and what a terrible, precarious life it is, and how dreadful it is, and how short term it is. Well, if you're getting paid £3 or £4 million a season, in most walks of life, it can afford to be short term.
So if there's been a fallout of some sort or a difference of opinion between Nuno and Marinakis.
Yeah. Well, the media's
Is Marinakis the kind of guy that says, right, let's wipe the slate clean and we crack on?
I don't know him. So I would imagine Marinakis is the type of guy that wants to win at all costs, and people don't stand in his way, whoever they are. And if they do, they get put in their place. And it'd be fascinating to know the absolute ins and outs. There's lots of rumours about the ins and outs of what may or may not have been said to Gibbs White and the consequences of any potential desire to leave. But the fact of the matter is that the player stayed.
Yeah.
Nuno Espirito Santo has this reputation. People think he's a mild-mannered, congenial, pleasant fellow. But I understood he was quite a difficult bugger when he was at Wolves. And people get fed up with his politicking and playing out to certain galleries. And he's just done it again. And it won't serve him well. Right now, his currency's high, because he has done a brilliant job and he should be given all the plaudits of that. I just think that what happens in the slightly immature world of football is that people get carried away with themselves and they forget that actually, I don't own this club, I just work for it. I best remember my place at times. And I'm not talking about the Bob Lord mentality of you being a serf and him being a land baron. I'm talking about the reality of he wouldn't expect his players to go, well, my manager didn't speak to me for a week. I haven't got the same relationship with my manager. He'd be uproared. He would be in uproar if one of his players popped up in the media saying, well, I don't have the same relationship with my manager that I once had. There'd be outrage. He would be outraged by it.
Yeah.
He'd say, that's not the way you behave yourself. So why do football managers honestly think that it's the right thing to do to challenge the ultimate authority? It's stupid. Now, whether he's achieved anything, the one thing you can say about Marinakis is he's committed to the well-being of his football club. However he achieves it, he will spend money, he will push the orthodoxy, he will challenge the system, he will fight his corner, he will not conform to what people think of the norms.
Sure.
So all of that tells you that you've got an owner that's committed. But it also tells you that perhaps be mindful of it. You want to have a fight with Marinakis, have it in private. Don't have it in the media. You didn't win this fight. You didn't get Marinakis to suddenly magic up some players and give you the support that you wanted because he saw you wittering on in some press conference to a bunch of gurning journalists. He was going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
All you did was shorten your career span at Nottingham Forest.
He certainly came out on top when it came to the Gibbs White debacle. All those who want to leave Forest take one step forward, not so fast, Morgan.
Yeah.
I mean, he came out on top there.
The walk.
But at the end of the day, I mean, were you close? I think I know the answer to this before I even ask it. Were you close to any of your managers at Palace? Did you have a decent relationship privately?
With all of them. Yeah, with all of them. Absolutely with all of them. You know, at different...
What, were you pals?
Well, it's difficult to...
You weren't pals with Dowie.
No, of course not. I tolerated him.
Because Gladian.
No, not particularly. No, he's not, in my view. But that's because I've got first-hand experience of him. And there were lots of things I did for Ian that I would never bring up in the public domain, but I did a lot for him and he betrayed my confidence. But that's a different discussion. Most of the time, you get on with your managers. I wasn't like Jamie Redknapp hanging around with Paul Kemsley, the vice chairman of Spurs, being his dancing partner, or someone else with David Sullivan. I didn't have that relationship. I didn't want to be the friends with the players. I didn't want to be friends with the managers. I wanted to be an honest owner of a football club that did what I said I was going to do and try to get them to do their job. I've got plenty of friends. You know, I got on well. I'd like to think I've got plenty of friends that I choose to have, and my employees aren't those.
But yeah, that's what I'm driving.
You've got to keep that line.
It was an employer-employee relationship.
Of course,
and that was it.
Yeah, you want it. I mean,
they knew you were the boss.
You get unique moments. I mean, I most of my players and managers would say that on the whole, I was pretty fair. I did what I said I was going to do, and I asked them to do the same. But I think that Nuno. I think he's unwise. I think he's unwise to do what he's done.
And he could still come unstuck.
Well, some would say you come unstuck anyway, because the moment you find yourself in a sticky position, you'll get let go.
Yeah.
But there is also an element of dispensation if you understand in certain circumstances how to behave. But then again, football's governed by a different set of rules. I used to think that the integrity was a big part of the sport. And it's an important thing to have is integrity. If you walk into the room and you're the only person with integrity, then you're going to leave with your pants around your ankles.
That's a thought. If you'd been working with Nuno and Nuno had said publicly, "Nah, the owner, Mr. Jordan, and I, we're not as close as we once were,"
I'd handle it like a Marinakis.
Would you handle it like I was just about to say
in
that.
Public?
Yeah. Okay, but you were friends with some of your managers.
Well, I was friendly.
Do you consider me a friend?
Well, yes, I've reached the rock bottom in my life where I have so few friends I grasp onto the ones that I've got.
Count me in any time. Phone me at any time. I'm there for you.